It's one thing to receive what we received from Rudy. It's a whole other thing to hold on to it in a sense of staying focused on it until it really gets a chance to blossom out. And this little spiritual child that was formed in us when we were with Rudy, by working, suddenly it sort of blossoms out as a being of its own, or just simply being. And then you're not so concerned anymore about working or this or that or anything really about, being attached to your particulars of your life. It's more like you really appreciate the particulars, but you do it in a way that is freer and more open. So, I remember too at Rudy's, after some of those experiences with him, everything suddenly became wonderful. We were rolling paint on the wall. Bruce and I are schmutzing on the roof in Big India in preparation for Swami Muktananda coming. And all of it was just, even though we were bitching and complaining about it really because it was so hard and so on, but I remember so well that feeling of just rolling the walls with paint. And it was just such a joy. And I was thinking, well, I will never again have to be bored in my life. I will always have this joy of just doing one thing after another, and whatever comes. Non-attachment that we could sense so strongly in Rudy, that we got a glimpse of ourselves, and that has gradually gotten a chance to take hold in us. And then that non-attachment, even though attachment comes again, it doesn't leave us forever at any level, I would claim, but we develop the ability and trust to deal with that attachment with a conscious letting go. That's also something I remember Rudy saying, you can't let go of something you don't have. So you have to own your anger, you have to own your attachment before you can let go, before you can experience the transformation of that attachment and it becoming an energy experience and an experience of presence. And it's an extraordinary opportunity to use the practice in that, not just when we sit down to meditate. This is just a little tiny portion of our day, but to start to think of all of our life as sadhana, as practice. A couple of you guys taken karma sannyas, and that's what that's about. Or being a karma yogi. Rudy was a karma yogi also, along with all other kinds of yogis. But he worked in a non-attached way in the world, with everything he touched. It was that non-attachment that carried the day and opened up for that to become an energy experience. It was looking at Rudy, it was like looking at the main story of the Bhagavad Gita. It was that come alive. You could see a big, very expensive statue fall, and he just wouldn't react in a normal way, He might say something about it, or even chew somebody out for doing something, but you could also sense at the same time, he was not attached to the thing. So it was extraordinary to be around him. And this karma yoga, or we could also call it, extending the energy, extending the practice into our everyday life, that really speeds up the transformation, because then you get so much nourishment from what life is teaching you, and the transformation happens that much faster, and you prepare yourself then for the kind of thing Bruce was talking about, which Ruben was talking about, which is the I am just that. I am just that presence. And then in that experience, we don't have to care about I and mine and so on in the same way. It's not that we don't have things, it's not that we're not concerned about, you know, making a living, having enough to eat and so on. But we are not attached to it in the same way. It can go this way or it can go that way. And we're sort of open to that. And that openness is being in touch with Shiva. I mean, it's the endless potential, the field of potential. And in that field of potential, things can go all kinds of different ways. Usually better than what we would make it if we controlled it ourselves. But not necessarily always to our liking. But in the transformation process, and Bruce, Denny, you Balaram, you know this better than me, there are real things that happen in the physical body and the psychic system. I mean, of course, all the texts talk about what happens in the psychic system with the Kundalini unfolding and cleaning up the chakras and so on. But now, you know, science also shows very clearly that actual pathways in the brain change. We used to think the brain is a fixed thing, and by the time we get to our age, it's over for a long time ago. You know, I mean, it doesn't. Brain waves die, and we are just finished. But the science shows that by doing this kind of work, then in the non-attachment, new pathways are spontaneously formed, and that the attachment patterns and the being obsessed with things, and you know, reactions that are sort of just comes about, you know, from our old patterns, our old traumas and all of that, that gradually gets decreased. They dissolve, those old pathways, and new pathways are made. I mean, how exciting is that, really? For those of us who are old in particular, that can keep happening. It's really great. So, and the karma yoga then, you know, using this practice in our everyday life, consciously. And when you're in a situation where you feel some old pattern or other manifesting itself, either you get angry or you get depressed or you get this or that or whatever it is, to then, you know, remember to say, okay, I want to step back from that. I want to take a breath. I want to feel my heart. Maybe it doesn't respond immediately, but if you keep doing it, it might take an hour, it might take a day, it might take a week, or more. But working on it like that, it does get transformed into an energy experience after a while. And this karma yoga, I think, is fabulous, because you can then start to experiment and notice how people are responding to you when you're in a different state, and you consciously break your patterns. But you know, this is a subtle difference between trying to consciously break patterns intellectually, or almost like moving pieces, furniture around in a room. This doesn't work too well, because the minute you try to do that, other things happen that you can't control. So the only thing to do it is through real surrender and non-attachment, where you rise up in that vertical dimension, and you get to a different level, and you look down and you see your little problems, and you laugh. Or you at least manage to walk over them. They don't block you anymore. You know? And this is really a very, very exciting way to live. It's not always an easy way to live. There's more pain, I would say, in this path than having no path at all. There is. But it's also equally or more joy. And if you can't feel the pain, you can't feel the joy. So this is another thing Rudy said, you know, you digest life whole with all its pains and all its joys.